This violent explosion ripped through the heart of a small town, killing 15, wounding hundreds, and fueled by a common fertilizer. So could it happen here? Thanks for choosing us tonight. I'm Katie Ramble.
And I'm Steve Irvin. That blast was fueled by the chemical ammonium nitrate, which can be found around our state.
ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger, along with the Arizona Center for Investigative Reporting, spent months trying to track down this chemical in Arizona.
Our exclusive investigation begins in West Texas.
The ceiling caved in inside the house.
It's been a full year since the fertilizer plant in West Texas exploded.
The roof seemed like it went up and came back down.
15 people died, hundreds injured.
The implosion effect from that blast drew everything inward.
I was in shock.
The damage so extensive, entire neighborhoods were destroyed. Councilman Steve Vanek spent the past year helping to rebuild the city of West.
There's still a lot of people reeling and hurting. They didn't realize the danger.
It seems no one did.
The ammonium nitrate never entered into our mind, and as firemen here in West, nothing was ever happened. It was a safe plant.
In hindsight, he says they were too complacent. First responders and people who grew up around the plant should have been more aware of the potential danger. And now the federal government has declared the explosion should have never occurred.
You know, hindsight's 20/20.
So are we any safer here in Arizona?
What happened in Texas could certainly happen here.
Steve Brittle is a longtime advocate fighting for better enforcement of hazardous chemicals in Arizona.
We don't have a handle on it at all.
Facilities that have large amounts of hazardous materials are required by law to report them to the Arizona Emergency Response Commission. The list might surprise you. While big fertilizer operations have to report, so do gas stations, farms, water treatment plants, pool supply shops, and even grocery stores. But there's a loophole specifically for ammonium nitrate. If it's sold as a fertilizer, there's an agricultural retail exemption that means they don't have to report. The ABC 15 investigators found there's a lot the state doesn't know. They don't know how many facilities fall under that retail exemption, and they don't know how many facilities aren't reporting the chemicals they should. Mark Howard is in charge of the reporting.
How many facilities that store hazardous chemicals in the state do you think you don't know about?
I wouldn't even want to try to guess.
I would say there's dozens and dozens of them.
After the explosion in West, the Texas State Fire Marshal encountered the same problem. They didn't know where all of the ammonium nitrate was in the state.
But what happened there could very easily happen somewhere else.
He put inspectors on the ground, went to every facility, and made it searchable by zip code on this website.
I think a citizen should know what's next door to them.
But in Arizona, it's harder to get to that information. The ABC 15 investigators researched and found 73 fertilizer plants statewide. Of those, Howard told us only 4 reported having ammonium nitrate. All are located near people's homes.
Do you think that a good number of those fell under that agricultural exemption?
It's a possibility. I don't know.
Apache Nitrogen Products, just south of Tucson, has the largest amount of ammonium nitrate in the state. A combined 80 million pounds. That's 148 times more than in West Texas. While Apache reported their chemicals to the state, we went to visit their local fire department in the town of St. David, Arizona. Population 1,700. We wanted to see if they have it.
It is really important that facilities like this work with their local fire departments.
By law, Apache Nitrogen is required to tell them what kinds of hazardous chemicals they store and make.
We really have no idea.
We found the St. David Volunteer Fire Department has no paperwork from Apache. Apache Nitrogen told us in a statement safety is its #1 priority across its entire site, and they are in constant communication with the fire departments in their area.
It all comes down to the first responders knowing what's in their area.
Arizona State Fire Marshal Bob Barger would like to see some kind of statewide tracking of ammonium nitrate so first responders don't walk into a trap.
You don't want to go to a barn fire and think you have a barn fire and there's 20,000 tons of ammonium nitrate in there.
But Brittle says emergency planning in Arizona passes the buck to first responders.
Well, so much for emergency planning.
So who's left? The families who live nearby.
If you know the potential of what's there and you're close, if it were to explode and it would cause you some major damage, you get in your car and you leave.
That's not what happened in West. People came close to the fire to watch.
I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
Given the amount of ammonium nitrate, there would be very likely a very large hole in this part of the state.
Could a deadly explosion like this one that happened in West Texas happen here in Arizona? That's the question the ABC 15 investigators and the Arizona Center for Investigative Reporting are trying to answer in a 3-month-long look into hazardous chemicals in our state.
ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger went to the largest fertilizer plant in Arizona, one with 80 million pounds of ammonium nitrate. That's about 148 times more than was stored in Texas.
Apache Nitrogen Products is the largest fertilizer plant in Arizona. A few miles away sits St. David, population 1,700. Their volunteer fire department serves as the area's first responders.
We have 13 volunteers.
Jason Todd joined the department 4 years ago. He says his second week on the job, they got a call from the plant.
A brake fire on a truck hauling hazardous materials. I was right at the front gate.
Do you know what was in the truck?
I have no idea.
To this day, St. David firefighters don't know what chemicals are in the plant, but they should. Arizona law requires facilities like Apache Nitrogen to file what are called Tier 2 reports. They list all large amounts of dangerous chemicals with the state and county emergency planners. Local fire departments must be included, something Apache Nitrogen failed to do.
Do you have any of the hazardous chemical inventory sheets?
No, we don't. If they do call us to show up, we have to stop at the gate like everybody else.
Well, so much for emergency planning.
Steve Brittle is an advocate for stricter environmental laws in Arizona. He says if first responders are kept in the dark, the same type of disaster that occurred in West Texas could happen here. Of the 15 people who died in that blast, 12 of them were first responders.
When they get there, they're in a reactive mode. They don't really know it's there, and anything can happen. Anything can go wrong.
In 2009, a dust explosion at the plant exposed 10 workers, and we discovered Apache's been fined twice for not alerting authorities of 4 different chemical leaks.
The smaller departments are usually left in the lurches trying to figure it out on their own.
Apache Nitrogen told us in a statement safety is its #1 priority across its entire site, and they are in constant communication with the fire departments in their area. They say the closest departments with HAZMAT capabilities are 35 miles away in Sierra Vista.
We should be able to be allowed to train with their folks so that we're at least familiar with the facility and familiar with the hazards that we'll be facing.
Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
Apache Nitrogen has their own hazmat and suppression teams on site, and they tell us they plan to hold a training exercise with the St. David Fire Department. That should happen sometime later this year.
You think you're safe in your home, but nearly half of you live in a danger zone. If the worst case scenario chemical accident did happen, would your family get caught in a toxic cloud?
ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger and the Arizona Center for Investigative Reporting spent months looking into that very question. And tonight, an exclusive look at your neighborhood emergency plans.
Chemical accidents happen all around us.
6 explosions, big explosions.
In our communities, near our homes and highways, hazardous materials that leak, burn, and even explode. The consequences can be dire. The National Response Center shows 25 people died in chemical accidents in Arizona in 2012 alone. In our state, there are more than 100 facilities known to use the most high-risk hazardous materials. From large manufacturing plants like Fertizona's fertilizer plant in Buckeye.
Do you have any idea what they do in there and what they have?
To places you shop every day. Names you recognize like Walmart, Target, Shamrock Farms, and pool supply shops and grocery stores. Each business must file what's called a worst-case scenario plan, outlining the impact of chemical leaks, spills, and explosions, including how many of you would be hurt if the worst were to happen.
Anybody want to buy in that area, they should know what's going on in that area so they can make that decision.
We compiled the data to create this map of danger zones across our state and who they would affect. We found nearly 3 million of you live within one or more of these danger zones. That's 44% of the state's population.
We knew there were a lot of people in these vulnerability zones, but that is higher than even I anticipated.
Sean Moulton is with the Center for Effective Government in Washington, D.C. He says the public needs to know what's in their backyard so they know what to do in case of an emergency.
West Texas was a tragic example of how bad things can get when the information isn't shared and people don't know what risks are in a facility.
Our investigation found the top 3 facilities alone would affect most of the valley if their worst-case scenarios took place. Many of the danger zones overlap. If you live in parts of Tempe, 8 different facilities could affect you. In Scottsdale, 5 overlap. There's another cluster of danger zones along the I-10 in West Phoenix. The largest danger zone surrounds DPC Enterprises in Glendale. They repackage chlorine. If the worst happened here, 1.9 million people within a 14-mile radius could be exposed to dangerous chemicals.
All of a sudden, from 0 to 1,000 patients. That'd be very, very hard for any hospital in Phoenix to handle all of that.
DPC had a dangerous leak before. In 2003, a toxic chlorine gas leak injured 11 police officers. The gas leak lasted 6 hours. 2,500 houses were evacuated, and students at Andalusia Elementary went on lockdown.
It's not that safe if we're having all our kids at the playground. How do you get like 300 kids inside right away?
The U.S. Chemical Safety Board's report showed they didn't have sufficient safeguards or training in place. Issues the facility has since fixed.
When an accident happens, it's chaos, and you can't be telling people at that time what they should be doing to protect themselves.
If you do get exposed to it at high concentrations, and this is extremely rare, it can cause death.
Dr. Frank Lavecchio with the Poison Control Center at Banner Hospital says these chemicals are considered highly toxic.
Some of them, unfortunately can cause temporary blindness. It's really bad. Coughing, shortness of breath, breathing problems.
I think it would be a good idea just to not have them near our kids.
So, do you live in one of these danger zones? Find out on our website, abc15.com/investigators. There you'll find this interactive map and another that shows the blast zones for facilities that have explosives. I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.
We created this map to show you the danger zones around chemical facilities right here in our state, and you can see whether or not you live in one of these overlapping danger zones. Last week, we showed you how businesses plan for the worst to happen, and tonight, ABC 15 investigator Lauren Gilger shows you the holes in this system.
An ABC 15 investigation found nearly 3 million Arizonans live within one or more chemical danger zones.
You didn't know when you moved in that they have some really dangerous stuff down the street?
No. That's 44% of our state's population.
Would that have changed your mind about?
Oh, definitely.
Our findings were based on the worst-case scenario plans filed by the businesses themselves. Each company that uses high-risk hazardous materials is required by law to outline what would happen if there was a leak, spill, or explosion on site. Sean Moulton is with the Center for Effective Government in Washington, D.C.
People may not realize the danger that these facilities still pose to them.
By reviewing all the worst-case scenarios, we found they may not tell the whole story. There are gaps in the system.
It has a number of holes that prevent it from really giving us the full picture.
Each chemical has a minimum amount to report. Under that amount, and they don't have to make an emergency plan for it. Critics say it's a flaw in the law itself. Facilities are only required to report the container with the largest amount of a high-risk chemical on hand. According to records, Apache nitrogen products south of Tucson has more than 18 million pounds of anhydrous ammonia. But cross-check that with the worst-case scenario plan they filed, and you'll see they only outline plans for a fraction of the amount. Critics say another gap is the exemption for retail sales. If a company sells flammable fuels like propane, even a lot of it, they don't have to report.
The reality is the community members can be hurt or killed just as easily from retail chemicals as they can be from commercial chemicals.
And then there's the list of chemicals itself. Not all chemicals are officially considered high risk, even ammonium nitrate. Facilities like the fertilizer plant in West Texas are not required to file worst-case scenario plans for ammonium nitrate, the chemical that killed 15 people there last year. Here in Arizona, 3 different Fertizona fertilizer plants have almost 1 million pounds of ammonium nitrate combined, but don't have to make worst-case scenario plans for it. A recent Inspector General's report found some Arizona facilities don't report all the chemicals they have on site. It claimed that can lead to serious problems, like inadequate responses to protect the public when accidents do happen.
West Texas is not an outlier. It is a bigger accident, but it is an accident that is just waiting to reoccur someplace else with some other chemical.
I'm investigator Lauren Gilger, ABC 15 News.